Guys, have you ever heard of Thule?
I've heard of it briefly, but I couldn't tell you what it was beyond an object or a place.
And you, Felix?
Yeah, that does say something.
Well, so Thule is actually one of the oldest mythical islands we still have. I think it's probably going to be around the same age, technically speaking, as Atlantis, as the Atlantis myth, because Atlantis was described by, I think Plato mentioned it. So that would this was first mentioned around 320 before Christ. So the gist of the story is that a man called Pythias of Massalia, which is modern day Marseille. I found out that Marseille was actually founded by the Greeks. Well, the more you know. Um, he apparently wrote a treatise on his travels to Great Britain and the islands beyond. Dot dot dot. His actual works were lost, but there's a lot of references to his works from other people whose work we do have access to. So this is not really much of a conspiracy, but it's honestly a really cool historical, mythical tidbit that I just wanted to discuss. So I'm just going to discuss some of the cool little facts about the island. So Thule is supposedly located to the north of Britain, like to the very far north, further than the Orkney Isles. And apparently, there was some debate about whether this was even possible because a historian, like 100 years later, a historian referenced Pythias's claims and said that it would be impossible to go to such a place because if you go further north than the northern part of Great Britain, the sea, land, and air will actually turn into an impassable jellyfish like consistency, which means you would not be able to go there physically with a boat. So that's one criticism on the account of Pythias, which I thought was pretty interesting. But basically, the island of Thule represents the end of the known world. So, and it still does in a lot of literature, actually. So, technically speaking, they did have some things right, and they also had some things wrong, because Thule, the island, was actually described as having full days without sunlight and full days with no sunlight, which is actually a thing that happens. It's called midnight sun and polar night, which does happen in the very furthest reaches, which is interesting, the fact that they mentioned that, because they apparently these ancient scholars did know about it, but they kind of misattributed it to this really weird place called Thule. Yeah, and it's been that people tried to pinpoint the location of the actual island Thule, but they kind of messed up a bunch of times. People thought it was going to be the Orkneys. They thought it was Greenland. They thought it was Iceland. People thought it was Norway, Sweden, or even Estland, which just blows my mind. How is Estland going to be the most northern part of anything? There's like a literal big part of continent right above it. Yeah, so that is the story of Thule. It's basically a bunch of accounts, but it's kind of been embedded into our cultural awareness of it because it's been referenced a lot of time by authors and shit. So, for example, Thomas Cook, the cartographer and explorer, actually called the most southernmost island he found on the south part of South America, he called it Southern Thule. So it does exist, and it is very far south, but it's not the same.
I mean, never say never, right? Because I mean, we didn't discover Vinland, which the Vikings were obsessed about until the 1960s or so, right?
Well, Finland, yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You come from Finland, technically.
No, I don't. Not, don't call me a Newfoundlander. Come on,
Ah, come on, it's
I'm
the same
cooler than
continent.
that.
Ah, you're from Canada. It's the same thing.
Yeah. No, I like the idea.
So, what do you think about this, Felix? About the whole Tula myth? Doesn't really.
Perhaps I missed it, but what was it? What was the time period? What was the year that they kind of brought it up?
So, like I said, it's a bunch of different accounts, but the first mention of it was 320 before Christ. So it's pretty dang old, and it's been like people have written about this up into the Middle Ages because they didn't actually have any means to verify what it was. Because honestly, the account of Pythias was lost pretty soon, I think. So they just had references of other people to work with, just like we're doing now.
I like the idea. I have to say, I then again, with your island in the beginning, that was it on the map? I would probably could think of, oh, it was a different island
Mm,
that they mistake for Tila
yeah.
or Tula.
Exactly. Interestingly, a lot of people say that Pythias was 100% full of shit and that he didn't actually travel to the Great Britain at all, which is, I think, the most interesting account is that just this Greek guy goes away for about a month or two from his hometown and comes back and he just tells all these great stories about this island and all the things he saw, but he actually just went and visited his grandma or something, which I think is a very human approach to things.
I mean, Thule, the picture you have up right now, it looks a bit like, Urk,
It, yeah, it does. I mean, I wish Urk was slightly further to the edges of the known world, but
well, you've lost you lost your listeners from Urk, that's for sure.
I don't think they have internet.
I don't think
they don't even
right?
have internet there.
Yeah.
And they don't speak English, that's fine.
See, I'm proving my Dutchness. I'm telling you. Come on. What would a non-Dutchman notice?
Plus, yeah, you get one Dutch point. And I have one final interesting fact, which is honestly a rabbit hole. And if anyone wants to research this and finds out anything cool about it, let me know, because I don't know about this. So, have you ever heard about the Thule Society? Either of you?
I have not,
No.
but I love secret societies, so okay.
Right.
Go on.
So you're not going to love it as much because it is a secret society that was founded in 1918 Germany.
Oh, okay. I retract
Yeah.
my previous statement.
And they were occultists, and they were also high-ranking Nazis. So
Yeah.
the Nazis kind of had a thing with occultism, right? It's been explored in a lot of different things. A lot of different medias. And it's actually true because the Nazis did have this weird obsession with occultism. And apparently the Thule Society was actually quite influential. I think Rudolf Hess was actually part of it. He was a pretty famous Nazi. Anyway, they had a theory about Thule, which is why they call it named it the Thule Society. And that is that Thule was the actual mythical birthplace of the Aryan race. That is where it came from. It came from this island.
No.
Yes, it was actually a thing. And interestingly, they theorized that this place, Thule, was actually the capital of a lost continent called Hyperborea.
I know they searched a lot for it. I mean, once we do our Antarctica episode, we'll know a lot more about this. That's all I'm going to say. But once we do our Antarctica episode, we'll mention this a bit more.
Yeah. But Hyperborea was basically a sort of paradise which is beyond a range of mountains, which is also non-existent or very mythical. So it's just this paradise-like place where apparently the Aryans came down and blessed the earth, which is just such a typical Nazi thing to think of. So yeah, that's the Thule Society. It was a Nazi thing as well.
It's interesting, gotta say. I mean, not that I approve in any means, but... Yeah.
Well, now you know. If you ever asked about the Thule Society or anyone wants you to join their secret society and they call it like that, then you know what to do. You got to run.
Yeah.
Probably going to turn out in their SS uniforms at some point.
Yeah, not good.
No.